One, two, one, two. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This is Gap Tooth. It's a pleasure to be back talking to you. We have a very special guest today. This brother right here is somebody who I've known for a long time, and I have an extreme amount of respect for. He's a person who puts his actions where his philosophy is, so to speak. I don't like the saying, put the money where the mouth is and all that. I don't eat money, so I don't know what that, I don't even understand that saying, you know? So, but anyway, this brother is somebody who I highly respect. I'm somebody who's kind of like a perpetual little brother. I'm the youngest of 8. So in a lot of my friendships, I'm like the little brother to a lot of my friends, you know? There are a few people who I'm definitely the older brother to. And then there are very few people from that older brother circle that I consider my OGs. This brother right here is definitely one of my OGs and has been involved in helping me evolve my life. And so we're going to talk to him. He's active. He's coming out of Oakland, California. And we're waiting for him to join us right now. Here he is right here. Let's do it. Islam, assalamu alaikum, Aki. You can hear me, good brother? Let me see, I might be on mute. Oh, all right. Islam, how's the brother?
Islam, peace and love. All is truly well. How are you, my brother?
I'm doing well, good brother. As you can see, as everybody can see, I'm rocking the Moorish Sports t-shirt from our brother Caduce Enterprises. So anybody wants this, you can find this online to represent. Good brother, before we begin, can I just ask you your official title, what your official title will be right now for the people to understand?
Islam, peace and love. I am Cosmo Ill, the Minister of Culture of the Moors, and also Grand Shiek of Moorish Science Temple of America, California, Inc., Temple number 1, out of Oakland, California. And I just want to also extend a thanks to you bringing me on and allowing me to build and along with you in front of your viewers.
No doubt, Mo. It's a pleasure and it's an honor, to be honest with you, because I really think that, you know, this subject itself is important, because I myself am a product of the Moorish movement. You know, if I hadn't come across the Ummah, you know, 20-something years ago, my life's timeline would have gone in a completely other direction. And because I'm an artist and because I've been blessed to travel to so many places around the world, I saw firsthand how the information that I got from you Moors, well, us, but you Moors in particular, right? And I was able to apply in other countries. When I went to Tunisia or Algeria or the Maldives Islands and these places, I was able to actually apply my Moorish culture and understanding, and it was recognized, accepted. It was as if I knew the code words, you know? So for people who don't understand, can you break down for me from Temple number 1's position, Oakland, California, which you are the Grand Shiek of? What is the Moorish Science Temple, and how could the average person apply it to their lives? Moorish Science Temple, and you know, is it? Some people think it's Masonic. Is it a Masonic thing? You know, could you just go into an introductory, you know, explanation?
So in doing that, if I may just speak a little bit, give a little bit of background,
Please.
because you and I came up a particular way, a lot of Moors out here in Southern California. And me, myself, I found Moorish Science early, at the early age of 14. This is before I even entered into high school. I was into hip hop, and hip hop at the time had a lot of speeches from Farrakhan, Malcolm X, even some Black Panther, Last Poets type stuff. So not only was I into listening to hip hop, but I was an MC at the time. So being exposed to these things in the 90s, these concepts from our great brothers, it kind of made me have an interest in Islam. And so at that point, I went on a path to say, well, what is Islam? I studied from the Nation of Islam, the Orthodox Islam, and learned a lot about Islam. But the one thing that was always missing was the cultural aspect, because when I looked around in Islam, everyone who didn't look like me had a culture, had an expression. Even though they were Muslims, they had another language, or they had a way they dressed, they had culture along with it. And so I realized that the so-called African-American Muslims and things that we were around, we had the culture, we had the general Islamic culture, but we lacked a national culture of our own, or at least that's what it appeared to be. So at the young age, I decided to study with the Moors. And in doing so, I learned about concepts of nationality. And when I went to Poly High School, I actually helped to form what was known as the Moorish Chess Club, with other Moorish brothers that helped guide me in that venture, Hussein Bey being one of them. Of course, everything was under the Giant Bey, under his tutelage. Yes. And so we fast forward a little bit, coming from that young age and where I'm at now, about 29 years in the movement, because we were active. We weren't just members, we were active out there in the society. That's a whole nother story, the background aspect of it. But studying Moorish science and participating in the Moorish Science Empire of the West, the Far West Province of Moors, and the Moorish Science Temple of America, these different groups that taught civics, Islamic science, Moorish science, I pretty much went through a lot of different positions, which landed me where I am right now. Position the Minister of Culture is given to me by the Giant Bey. And since then, Allah has blessed me to be able to grow out that position to where it is a respected position, the Minister of Culture amongst the Moors. And there are other ministers of culture now that have come about. And so, in working with Temple 101, in the last, say maybe 5 or 6 years, we formed the California Council of Moors, which brought a lot of Moors in the state together. And along the way, Sister Janelle Ill, who founded the Moorish Science Temple of America in 1974 here in Los Angeles, took me under her wing as well, and appointed me to Grand Shiek of that temple. And, she passed away. From Allah we come, and to him we return. And so I've had to grow into that position with the help of the members. And we've launched the first Oakland temple, Moorish Science Temple, brick and mortar temple here. So that's what lands me there as Grand Shiek in that position. So now, coming from that background, what is the job of the Moorish Science Temple, or what are some of the concepts of Moorish Science? Well, the building blocks of Moorish science are the concepts of nationality and religion, right? Now, most people are not into religion. Say, well, I'm not into religion. I mean, well, that's religion from the Western concept, the way it's practiced with materialism and the white supremacy and the hypocrisy, where you can exterminate and commit genocide on the people. So that type of religion, of course, but being that we are the founders of the first religious creeds, we have to look past Western materialism and its application of religion and look to what our forefathers intended it to be. And what our forefathers intended religion to be, something similar to what is expressed in the Constitution. And within religion, within the Constitution, you have religious protections, because church, religion, separate from state. So as religious body, you have to govern yourself. Now, On the nationality side, the foundation of Moorish science was brought to us by Noble Jew Ali. He brought us our nationality and our divine creed, which intersects with our religion. The nationality side is not, and I was explaining this on an interview just a couple of days ago, it's not about I call myself this, you call yourself that. It has to do with concepts of nationality, denationalization, and law. Because there's a secret amongst all Americans. They all have a nationality, but so-called Black people do not have one. And I'll stop it there, and so that, because I'll keep talking, but the building block.
Yeah. No, completely understood. You mentioned the Giant Bay, who holds a lot of authority in Los Angeles. Could you go into any background of the brother?
Well, the Giant Bay is a very very powerful teacher, Grand Shiek, mentor, historian, revolutionary.
Right.
His history is not limited to Moorish science. It's not limited to many of the spheres that have our people divided. In fact, you can find in his character a unity amongst pretty much all of the spheres, whether it be from the Nation of Islam, him being the first captain, which introduced Farrakhan to Los Angeles with Khalid Muhammad, which has something to do with why Khalid Muhammad in his last days was speaking up on being a Moor, or whether it be him being a mentor or being mentored by Big Bunchy Carter, and who is now being known as Little Bunchy in affectionate circles to Bunchy Carter, and also in the greater revolutionary community, to being his legacy of being one of the founders of the Crips, along with Raymond Washington and Tookie, which, given the history that they were actually baby Cribs or coming out of the Panther Party, which again relates it back to Bunchy Carter, or whether it be him being a Islamic teacher of Islam and mentoring and Moorish science and mentoring many of brothers and sisters throughout the community. But he also has a couple of degrees in history and some other things. So, his
I didn't know that.
Yeah, he has a couple of degrees in history, not so-called Black history, but
history. Right.
And so he's just such a dynamic figure. And so by him mentoring all of us, we got a lot of that. He wrote a book, a very crucial book, small booklet, known as The Fallen Moorish Empire, back in, I believe it was the early 90s. And this book was really phenomenal in its time. It was referred to in Sacred Drift, which is a book by, I forget
Peter
Lamborn Wilson.
Peter Wilson,
Peter Lamborn Wilson referred to it. And it's funny because he referred to it in a way in which he kind of said it may have been kind of fanciful, but back then, but looking at all of the Moorish information that's come out now, it really was just something that kind of just broke the Moorish history on the indigenous side here on the West Coast and resonating out. So much so that even the Washita Nation, when they were in Geneva, Switzerland at the UN, sent an actual letter to the Sheikh recognizing as the far west province of Moors. So, I could go on and on, but I'll stop there about,
I was speaking to Zero Bay the other day, and he was telling me a story that he came across some Moors down in Los Angeles somewhere, and he went up and introduced himself and said, "Hey, I'm Zero, Islam," and he says, "Matter of fact, here go my bona fides right here," and he took out the ID card from
way back,
and they seen and they hold because of what was on that card,
what was on it, and only now are people starting to actually, know what you at least said your nationality card would change on you in your pocket. So we know that
Mm.
nationality cards are changing. I mean, if for no other reason that just the technology changes, you know,
Exactly.
and you have to update. There's standards, there's identification standards, you know, in law, and so you have to keep up with those standards even.
So would you say that knowing the law is a cornerstone of Moorish culture? Are you a Moor without knowing law?
Well, it says in our questionnaire, it says, why are we Moorish Americans? Because we are descendants of Moroccans born in America, not modern Moroccans, ancient Moroccans. And so you're a Moorish American.
Islam, one question. So,
Islam.
because this is what people are going to be asking. When you say Moroccans, not modern, but ancient, are you speaking about the boundaries that we know today of as Morocco? The same boundary lines?
All right, so say before we go into that previous question, let's go a little bit more background, because I didn't get to go into it, but I didn't want to give it all in one lump. So let's start with, yes, ancient Morocco. What is ancient Morocco? Why do Moors connect with this term Moor? All right, let's go into some etymology and history. If you look at the term black and Negro and colored and even African American,
yes,
these are what you call social constructs and chattel slavery terms, meaning we didn't come over here like that.
Right.
Nor did we come over here with the names of Johnson and Blake and Jefferson and so on and so forth. These were names given to us by slaveholders in 1779 up until 1865 during the time of slavery. So now once we come out of, if we're supposed to be free, so-called free, then we coming out of slavery, then the first thing that you need to do is get rid of those brands, those chattel brands given to you by your former slave owners. So most people can understand that, well, dang, yeah, I know I still got Washington on my name. You know, that represents, when you have that, that represents the person who held your people in bondage, your family. So now, same with the national name. Just as our names were changed, our personal names were changed, our national name was changed to these social constructs and these chattel terms known as Negro, Black, Colored, Ethiopian, Indian, African, so on and so forth. These have no historical, anthropological, well, some do have some historical, but no anthropological or identity, true identity basis. So we say, well, what does this word Moor comes from? Moor is English, just like black, just like all these other things. Moor is a little different because Moor is an adaptation of an ancient word that is brought into English. That means its origin is with the ancient word. And so the history is still connected there. The continuity is still connected there. We speak in English, we say Moor. If I was speaking another language, I might say Mer, Mar, Moor, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
So you say, well, how do we know that we're connected with this word Moor at all? And one of my books, I have a book known as Blackamoor, Bridging the Gap Between Moor and Black. Most people don't know in between Negro and Black, and before these terms were wholesalely used, you have this word Blackamoor, right?
Right.
Now, I'm not saying that Blackamoor is the legitimate term that we should be using, but it represents the beginning in it represents a stage in the denationalization of the Moor, because first you were Moor, now you are Blackamoor, now you're just Black. Right. So that right there, it illustrates the linguistic genocide more than any other term. So I dedicated a book to this term. So now that we can see that there's some correlation between so-called Moors and Black, when you start looking into this term more historically, you'll see that it reveals more so-called Black history than Black history itself.
Right.
Only it doesn't limit you to the narrative of simply melanated people being limited to Africa, right?
Right.
What it lets you know is that melanated, all around the globe.
Global empire.
An empire. And where's this empire? Along the waterways where you see pyramids and mounds all around the world.
Right.
And so, and that's in China, Japan, Amazon in South America, the Nile, the Niger, up and down the Mississippi, in Colorado, you know, and they want people to think that.
What is it called? What's that big hole that everybody go see? The carved out. You know,
the Grand Canyon.
The Grand Canyon. Yeah. Yeah. You know,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of well-known archaeologists and things like that, like Klaus Dana, or even who's the guy that talks about the aliens, and William, no, not William Cooper, but Graham Hancock, and Klaus Dana, all these big like European archaeological people who talk about this world empire that existed, that obviously existed before this Roman timeline, because that's what it is. We're on this like manufactured Roman timeline. That's why we're on the Gregorian calendar. We use Roman script, Roman calendar. So if you know, if I can convince you that the age of the world is this, you're gonna say, well, before the year one, nothing really matters. So this was the year one, from here on. So that's what we focus on, you know? And so we're in that. But my point is, there's obviously an ancient, ancient as well as up to modern time, pre-Columbus world global empire that existed. So Islam does. So when we say ancient now, first thing, okay,
if I can interject just to bring it back to Morocco, because that's where we left off.
All right, yeah, good.
And so that to at least answer that question for the viewers. So that gives you some background on the ancient Moorish history. If we bring it up to the modern times, modern Morocco obviously got its independence in 1956, and that's the geographical borders right there.
Okay.
So your ancient Morocco, prior to that, was comprised of an empire, right? You had Morocco even in that region in Northwest Africa. The ancient Morocco there comprised of Mali, Mauritania, Songhai, all of Northwest Africa, Tunis, Tripoli, all the way over down to Egypt.
Right.
And then, so that was the capital. Some of the I guess you could say Africa is the capital, but then there was, or the dominion, but then there's an habitation which spreads out, and we'll talk that north, south, it spreads from northwest to southwest Africa, across the Great Atlantic, even unto the present, north, south, Central America, and all the adjoining islands, Sri Lanka, Malaysia, Hawaii, so on and so forth. And some people say, well, this is some fanciful history here, but if you look at, we say we're in our questionnaire, it says, well, what's the name of our ruler in Morocco? And you say Sultan. And if you look, you have sultanates that come all the way down from West Africa through Comoros, through Mozambique, all the way into India, into Sri Lanka, the Philippines.
Maldives, all of it. Yep.
Yeah. And they're all considered Moors. They only say Moro in using the Latin over there. And they wear fezzes, and they have black fezzes and all kind of things. Yep. Now, across the Atlantic into present North, South, Central America was also ancient Moorish Empire as well. It wasn't just ancient Moorish Empire. It was ancient Moorish Empire, but it was people from all around the world. This was the original melting pot. It didn't just begin, it was known as the melting pot because was a place where all nations, various nations had come, melanated nations, and even some of the pale skinned nations were even here. And that begins the division and some of the racism and you see now between the lighter indigenous and the darker indigenous, that the lighter indigenous don't want to accept the darker, and sometimes the darker don't understand that you do have lighter indigenous, So anyway, to answer that question about Morocco, we're talking about an ancient empire which spans from northwest to southwest across the Great Atlantic, all of those areas which I named. And it becomes relevant in law, which I'm sure we'll get to a little later.
Exactly. And I want to point out, because a lot of times when people think about empire, we're thinking about like Rome and these type of things like that. And we have to remember that empires don't always have to spread due to oppression and conquering people and bringing dogs and poison.
Exactly.
You can come bringing high science and gifts and civilization, and the peoples who you are coming across are not coming from a desperate living environment, so they're not ready to jump. They see you coming in peace, they come in peace. Y'all wearing feathers, we wearing feathers. Y'all brown, we brown. What you got? Let's eat. You know,
exactly.
and that was more, you know,
Commerce.
Yeah, how things were glued together through spread, you know, through cultural exchange and through organization that Moors, I think, brought, as well as the science. Because what I you know, Moorish information, some say, you know, the whole thing can go all the way back to, well, Islam goes back to Ma'at. They could say, hey, Islam has existed on the planet since the concept of Ma'at, right?
Even further.
And even before, right, alhamdulillah, right. So, and that's not to take anything away from the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, or the great Holy Quran of Mecca, you know. So
Well, it's just history. It's just it. The Quran itself says that there are various prophets from the beginning of time, you know.
Exactly.
And Islamic theology teaches that Islam actually began when the first, what I guess we could go all the way back to when Allah said be, and the first thing came into existence and was and submitted to his will, Islam actually began. So, but historically, you know, Egypt is a good place to start with Ma'at, and also Akhenaten, who was the first to bring so-called monotheistic concepts. And he was, if you look at his life and history, it parallels prophets because they slew the prophets and they didn't listen to the prophets, the ones who had the many gods, the money changers, the priestly clans. And so, in fact, there's a connection between Akhenaten through the Rosicrucian book, Unto Thee I Grant, which is a part of our Circle 7 as well. And the Holy Quran of the Moors, not to be confused with the Great Quran of Mecca. That's our holy book too. We derive our power and authority from that. But speaking on that part of the book, because some people say, I had a guy that, well, Noble Ali plagiarized this, plagiarized that. Well, the book was compiled. It wasn't written. It was prepared. And it was prepared with lost scriptures that have been taken out of other scriptures, you know, like the King James Version. Most people don't realize that's a version. There's other Bible
not a
versions.
translation, not a translation, but a version.
Yeah, and so there were books taken out. So he gave us a lot of the information that was missing about Jesus that come from the East. But part of it is this book, Unto Thee I Grant. And when you read in the book, Unto Thee I Grant, it's traced back to Akhenaten. The information is traced back to Akhenaten. So all of the instruction lessons, a lot of the instruction lessons, most of them, I should say, in the Circle 7 have a direct link to Akhenaten. And this is why Noble Jew Ali is known as the Egyptian adept and the prophet, because of the spirit and because of the station that he holds in bringing this information back to who it was lost, like Jesus did. You know, he came to save the Israelites from the iron hand oppression of the pale skinned nations of Europe that was governing a portion of Palestine at that time. Noble Jew Ali came to save us from the pale skinned nations of Europe that are governing a portion of our empire, of the Moorish Empire here in North America. Right. And so you got 48 years after slavery, he's returning us back to the concepts of nationality, which we lack, and divine creed and religion and its power, its constitutional power, as being able to pull us out of state abuses and put us into our own self-governance.
Exactly, Mo. You know, it's interesting because I did research once. I heard people talk about Hotep. You know, they said that the early Islamic scholars considered Imhotep to be a prophet. One of, you know, a prophet of Islam, you know, like the early. So because even Muslims will tell you, well, of course, in Islam, they say that there were like 1,300 different prophets. And the Quran, I think, mentions 26, and maybe the Bible has 25 out of the over 1,000, you know.
124,000.
144,000, right. Yeah, exactly.
I swear, 104, some say 124,000, others 144,000. But these are still just the ones that the Quran, like you says, the Holy Quran in Mecca only enumerates certain ones, but there are various prophets out there, and they all brought the same message, which was the unity of Allah and the the cleanup of being in the higher self and the lower self. And this is the information that was brought back to the Moors, you know, just on that level. Also the level of nationality, which deals with law and our status in this country.
Islam, can you describe that a little bit? Because I think it's important. It goes a little more into the spirituality of the doctrine of applied Moorish science. So what is the higher self and the lower self? It's pretty self-explanatory, but how do Moors define that?
All right, so we have a lesson known as Elihu's lessons, and Elihu is most famously known in the Bible from the story of Job, Elihu's rebuke. And so Elihu teaches in the Circle 7 Quran, which is like the Bible of the Muslims, so to speak, the Injil. It speaks of the higher self and the lower self. And it even asks the question, in our questionnaire, it asks the question, what is the higher self? And the answer is, the higher self is the mother of virtues and the harmonies of life, and it breeds justice, mercy, love, and right. And we say, well, what is the lower self breed? The lower self breeds hatred, slander, lewdness, murder, theft, and everything that harms. We say the higher self is Allah in man, right? We also say, where's the nearest place to meet Allah? In the heart. Also known as the small, still voice, you know. So the higher self is the divine attributes of Allah in man. And if one aligns himself or herself with these divine attributes, then that is what is known as being in a higher self. However, the lower self is the carnal self. It is the body of desires. It is a reflection of the higher self, distorted by the murky ethers of the flesh. Now, we don't look as the carnal self, we're not talking about just the physical body, because it's not in bones to think, nor in flesh to reason. So what we're talking about now becomes the fleshy mind, the fleshy impulses that often govern human nature unchecked by the higher self, because a lot of people are unaware that there are two selves. So when you're in the lower self, you're basically open to all of the negative vibrations and the negative attributes. And oftentimes this is what you manifest into your life. When you're in the higher self, you're vibrating with the high divine principles, and you're moving in the in justice and love and truth and peace. And so that is what you bring back into your life. So that's a simple explanation of it. But we also say, he who has, another quote from the Circle 7, it says, thrice blessed is a man who has made love and purity his very own, for he has been ransomed from the pearls of his lower self and is himself his higher self. So love and purity lay at the foundation. And as Grand Shiek in the Moorish Science Temple of America, beyond just teaching nationality and these concepts, the goal is to get our people to side with love and purity so that they can have the kingdom of heaven on earth, you know, a pure, good community, instead of the community filled with what? Hatred, slander, lewdness, murder, theft, and everything that harms, as we have right now.
As we have right now. Indeed. Islam. That's
Islam.
100. Yeah. Do you see, have you like, I just saw a good example is I just saw the premiere of Coming to America. Have you seen that?
I haven't seen, I saw the old one.
Yeah, you got to check the premiere, because it's like they opening up in Moorish Morocco. Like the screen opens up, you in Moorish Morocco, like old school, not present, you know, fezzed up, you know, mosque, domes, everybody's scienced out. So Islam. So my point is, what's interesting about this information, because again, as you know, we've been taught, the world has been taught NBC history, Negro, Black, and colored history regarding Black people in the Western Hemisphere, right? We all came off a slave ship from Jamaica to Canada and all the way between Brazil, and that's it. That's when the history began, and that's it, you know? So we've all been fed that information. But when you look at Hollywood, and once it's like finding out about the Masons or Illuminati or something like that. Once you find out about it, you start to see it everywhere. Once you find out about Moorish history and you find out that the fez and the turban were national headdresses that linked up these sultanates and this empire. You know, all the rulers of these places all wore a form of a fez from ancient times up to show the lineage, right? Once you see that and you look at Hollywood, how many times is it out there, right? Like how many hints and clues have they given us? Like the list is really endless. So do you think that's them telling, like even in Robin Hood, Azim, the Moor, and Robert, like, are they purposely doing that? Are they dangling it on? Even Martin Lawrence, he got a what is it, Black Moor? What I forget what it, Black Knight. But they like, you Moor. He's like, man, why y'all keep calling me Moor? Cause you a Moor, fool. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, cause you know we used to always say they know who we are more than we do. You know?
Yeah, I mean, well, you know that the thing is, the movie is a picture's worth 1,000 words, and the movie is just a moving picture. You know, it's and so motion picture, right?
Right.
And so they've always had it in the books. You know, they've always had it in the pictures. They've always had it in the movies. The thing is when people eyes are open. When your eyes open, it's just like when you get a new car. You know, it's a Honda. Now you see Honda everywhere because that's the vibration you on now. You know what I mean? Like it's been there, but you just weren't at that vibration to see it. So once you come into knowledge, now you're in the light. You see, you come out of the darkness into light, at least on that particular subject. And so now your eye is open, so you can see it everywhere. Not everybody's eye is open like that. Yeah. And then we also, are they doing it on purpose? Yeah, because they're gonna say that, hey, we told them, and you know they have to put it out there subliminally because they're actually and it's also a little joke between them, a little secret, you know. Only those who have eyes can see, so they can put it right out there and nobody will even know except those who have eyes can see, and those are the crazy ones, right? But if we look at it and we see it's been in their secret society, they are the why is it in their secret societies? Because we have to remember that it's only been two major empires for the past 6,000 years, and that's the Christian Empire of Rome and the Islamic or the Moorish Empire that have been checking Rome, right? And so, you know, when you realize that, then of course they have the history. They're the ones who have erased the history. So, but we also have to understand that as much as people are searching for identity and as much as the names have been changed, that you are what your forefathers were without a doubt or contradiction. Nobody can change your origin. Your origin is the same. So no matter what they call you, you still have an origin, and our origin it goes all the way back to original man, you know. But it's not just about pride when it comes to Moorish science, because again, it deals with law. So now we have to go back to, well, why not to call ourselves Black? What status does that put that in? What status does that put us in? When everyone in the United States or everyone else around the globe has a nationality, which is a human right, but we're in civil rights under Black and these other types of things, which is a domestic law. And then we wonder why we don't get justice, because it's a status that's connected to that slave name and those slave brands that are administrated totally different for the purposes of the law than free people who actually have their free national names. And so it's so much of a right that it's in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights to have a nationality. It's in the Declaration of Rights of Indigenous People to have a nationality. It's in the Declaration of the Rights of a Child to the right to a nationality. And yet so-called Negroes, Blacks, and colors, our family, never start to think that it's important to have a nationality. Now, some might say, well, my nationality is American, United States of America. That's my nationality. Well, we can prove, but it's apparent that so-called African Americans, Blacks, and people under these chattel terms do not receive the full justice and the full citizenship of others who have a nationality. It's apparent. And we don't have to argue that. Nobody can argue that.
Right.
So what they need to understand is, what is the secret that all Americans know that have a nationality and that express their nationality, and because of it, they have their neighborhoods, they have their businesses, they have their structures, their trusts, their schools, right? And they have their certain protections and rights. You'll never see a foreigner talking about civil rights. You'll never see, a European talking about civil rights.
Right.
You only see so-called Black people talking about civil rights, or other fictitious people like the LBGT. And people say, well, how can they come take over our movement? Because it's designed for fictitious people. So you can be born a man naturally, but for the purposes of the law, treated as a woman. So you can be born in this slave status with those slave terms on your name, but for the purposes of the law under civil rights, treated like a free person, even though you're not. Islam.
Islam. Man, that's real heavy. We're about at the 42-minute mark, and we might have to do a follow-up on this, brother, because we really just, I want to go in so many directions from what you just said. And I really hope people are soaking this up, because this is not just some philosophy to carry around. It demonstrates that there's an actual application and information about law that's necessary. And when the next time I speak to you, I'd like to know more about how it's applied. But I think one way is we can wrap this up by, can you just talk about what else is going on with you in Oakland right now? Like, how can people get in contact with you? How can they build? And then also, if I'm in another community, if I'm in Brooklyn or I'm in Arkansas or Mississippi somewhere, how can I get started with community outreach? And how can I be down and learn more about Moorish information from a credible source? Because if I look online, I'm going to be real confused. Islam.
Well, I mean, independent study is a wonderful thing, but it's nothing like having a mentor with a hands-on experience, I would say that, number one, look up your Moorish Science Temple of America in your area, or any civic groups or study groups teaching Moorish science. Be careful. There are a lot of charlatans out there that just want to take your money. You can write to the Minister of Culture at gmail.com, and I can refer you to some reputable temples in your community, in your state. If you are in Oakland, then you can also write to the Minister of Culture at gmail.com, and you can attend our services, which are every Friday at 7 to 10, and every Sunday from 12 to 2, where we go into it. So you can write us there, or you can follow at Cosmoel, COZMOEL on Instagram or Facebook, and also Cosmoel, COZMOEL at Amazon.com. I have several books on Moorish history and language, not so much on law. You have to come to the temple. Again, independent study is wonderful, but you want to be able to corroborate that information with somebody, make sure you're on the right path, and avoid having to, reinvent the wheel and go over some of the mistakes that other people have encountered. So,
Indeed.
Again, be careful out there, but a temple is a good, reputable place to start. A civic group, just if anybody's asking you for an inordinate amount of money, anything unreasonable beyond what somebody did to put in the work for a book or put together some writings, which is fair. Serving is worthy of his hire. And if a person's dedicating their life to this, then they need support. But if they're inordinate amount of money, like hundreds of dollars, then, be careful.
Yeah, no doubt. Because the information is real, people can use it to rip you off in certain ways. So definitely be careful. And on that note, more, I want to say peace and love to you and your family. I greatly appreciate it. My Zoj is on here too somewhere. She's just silent. She gives us salam.
Praise Allah. Alhamdulillah. And honors to you, my brother, again, to your viewership, and just, for what you're doing to, this is a wonderful thing. I mean, I'm a fan of your music, so I mean, I love it. And, you know, I want to see more of that. I want to see more of what you're doing, and of course, I'm always there to contribute. You know, you're a real Mo, a real more. Anybody who has doubts, later for that, you know, we're doing real work out here, and honors, my brother.
Islam, Mo. Thank you, good brother. Much appreciated, man. Peace and love.
Praise Allah. Peace and love, more Islam.
Islam.